learned that, ways to deal with your negative feelings. If you have hit bingo, you can go ahead and say bingo, or better yet, open your mics and say mental health, good mental health.
Good mental health.
Awesome. Thank you so much for participating. You have all won yourselves a prize of having a good mental health. Now we will have a special from Ebony Francis.
Good night. Feel quite sure if I did my best, I could maybe impress you with tender words and a harmony, a clever rhyme or two. But if all I've done in the time we've shared is turn your eyes on me, then I failed at what I've been called to do. There's someone else I want you to see. Will you love Jesus more when we go our separate ways? When this moment is a memory, will you remember his face? Will you look back and realize you sensed his love more than you did before? I pray for nothing less than for you to love Jesus more. I'd like to keep these memories in frames of gold and silver, and reminisce a year from now about the smiles we shared. But above all else, I hope you will come to know the Father's love. When you see the Lord face to face, you hear him say, well done. Will you love Jesus more when we go our separate ways? When this moment is a memory, will you remember his face? Will you look back and realize you sensed his love more than you did before? I pray for nothing less than for you to love Jesus more. Will you love Jesus more when we go our separate ways? When this moment is a memory, will you remember his face? Will you look back and realize you sensed his love more than you did before? I pray for nothing less than for you to love Jesus more. I pray for nothing less than for you to love Jesus more.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All our relationships should be gearing towards Jesus and helping us to love Jesus more. As we continue through our program, we're now going to have our health nugget by Shana K. Hall.
In the meantime, while Shanake gets ready to present the health nugget, I just want to involve the audience some more in this program. So I'm just asking if there's anyone here who would like to just give us a brief account on how they manage their mental health. It can be very brief. You can go ahead.
Hi again, everyone. Are you hearing me? Type yes in the chat if you're
Yes,
hearing me.
Ebony. Yes,
Yes.
we're hearing you clearly.
Okay. All right, lovely. All right. So for me, I do a lot of things actually. I sing, read. I go to somewhere calm, probably like the beach or something, you know, some form of water body. And in some cases, you know, I just have a good cry. I just have a good cry because sometimes that really helps me because I may be overwhelmed by something or you know something of the sort, and I just have a good cry, and I hang out with friends, and it helps. It helps. So that's my mental health thing.
Okay, Astanil, you can go ahead. Thank
Well,
you, Ebony. Thank you.
for me, I take a walk and enjoy nature. Sometimes I just sit and sing like I'm crazy, off key. But singing and taking a walk to enjoy nature or possibly do some extensive, aggressive exercising when I'm stressed and I know that my head is going and I need to bring it back where it is. Those are the things that I do.
Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing how you take care of your mental health. For me, sometimes I just watch things that can make me laugh, or I go to the seaside or to the river and just gaze out into nature. And honestly, sometimes I pray. So now we are ready for our health nugget, and Shana K will be joining us at this time.
Hello, everyone. Hello, and a wonderful good night to you all. As you can tell, it's time for our mental health nuggets.
Tum 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 tum.
There is this popular phrase, there is no health without mental health. Have you ever heard it? Have you?
Yes, Shamar, I've heard it maybe once or twice.
Nice. And I've heard it several times, and to be honest, it was something that even when I heard it the first time, it had to stay with me, And I pray that this saying will stay with us all.
What is health? Physical health tells how our bodies are. Having a healthy body is really important. Keeping fit. Are you keeping up with the Wednesday wellness challenges? Eating well, NutriFacts Fridays stand perfect as a guide. Adequate sleep. Your body need enough sleep to function to its full capacity. Stress management.
But
That's
health,
how it comes in.
health itself doesn't stop at physical health. Indeed, mental health comes into play. And mental health will deal with how our minds are, the thoughts, the feelings, behaviors, emotions that would take place. Having a healthy mind is just as important as having a healthy body. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 6, verse 19, that your body, that you are a temple of the Holy Ghost. Isn't that precious? So you can't properly have one without the other. They both go hand in hand to build the entire body. So the same things that keep our bodies healthy also keep our minds healthy.
Wow, that is really, really interesting. And for better health, we should start by disconnecting. As we all know, because of COVID, we are all home and everything is online. School is online, work is online, shopping is online. I just really miss going out and seeing my friends. Because we are on our phones so often, we may not notice it, but it can create an addiction and even cause social isolation. Just as how when we think of illnesses, we think of diabetes, epilepsy, and asthma. But mental health illnesses are just as common. Depression, alcoholism, schizophrenia are just as common as these physical illnesses.
Warning signs. How do you know that those around you are actually dwelling in these things and having an issue? You might find them doing poor performance, poor timekeeping, frequent headaches, backaches, withdrawals from social contact, difficulty concentrating, some constant tiredness. They work slowly. We need to look out for these things in our surroundings.
That is so true, Asanil. The Bible tells us to be our brother's keepers. And sometimes when we see our friends, our peers, our church brothers and sisters showing these signs, we don't know what they are. And we just say, oh, she soon get over it, or him soon get past it. It's just a phase. But this is how we can help.
Indeed, this is how we can help. We ourselves have to be aware of our own negative stereotypes and stigmatizing attitudes. Those attitudes that we may get to just play off something that is not really important, but it really and truly is important. So we have to be aware of that. We have to be conscious of that.
Also, we need to seek further advice and information as necessary. Sometimes when we hear mental health, we think of madness. Oh, this person's going insane, but it's not always so.
Hey, you know what? Stop. Think, understand, and guess what? Support. Let us be supportive.
This PowerPoint can be shared, or it can be a request if you so have one. We can share it to you in the old ministry group for further reading for the resources. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much, Asanil, Shamar, and Shanake. Thank you for sharing those mental health tips with us. I think we are becoming appreciative of this program as we go deeper and deeper. I've learned a lot a while ago. I like the one that Asanil said. I can't remember it, but I liked it. And I think it says, stop, understand, and support. That's my takeaway, because sometimes we see persons around us and we don't know that they're suffering from mental health. So that is why I encourage you, I take this time to encourage you to be kind to others around you and share a smile, share a brief word of encouragement, something simple like going on the bus and saying, Jesus loves you, or you are looking beautiful today. That can help with mental health, at least for a little while, right? So thank you so much, guys, for sharing. We appreciate it. We will now ask Melissa Campbell to introduce the speaker for today.
Hi, everyone. Good night. Now, here I am to introduce to you a doctor. He works in the Department of Psychiatry at the University Hospital of the West Indies. He's worked on Ward 21 since 2017, and he has also worked as a medical officer at Bellevue Hospital. He's currently the secretary of the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association and a member of the Caribbean Institute for Mental Health and Substance Abuse. He's also a member of Jamaica Psychiatry Association. You know, all of these accolades allow him to be able to share with us today under the topic, let's talk mental health. Your mental health is important to you. Hear him as he speaks about mental health with us today. A lovely individual. So keep your ears open. He is very good at what he does. Dr. Brian Kazara.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Unfortunately, I am not at home as we speak, so I can't necessarily put on my mic. I mean, I can't put on my camera. I'm sorry about that. Nevertheless, I think we can proceed with our discussion. Thank you so much, Melissa, for that great introduction. So far, I've really been enjoying this program and the approach that you guys have taken to mental health. Now, interestingly enough, I find the title that you guys have assigned to this section, Let's Talk Mental Health, to be one that is very relatable, because that's something that I do all the time. I basically have, my career basically is about talking about mental health to a large degree, whether it be to patients who are affected or family members who are also oftentimes affected when their loved ones have mental health issues or mental illnesses. And then, of course, as a part of public health campaigns to raise the awareness of mental health issues and things regarding mental illness. As you guys have highlighted throughout your program, we know that mental health is much more than the absence of mental illness. So even though mental illness is very important and something that we all have to be aware of so that we can help ourselves and help others, we can also appreciate that even if we don't have a mental illness, there are still many things we have to do to safeguard our mental health or optimize our mental health. Common mental health conditions that affect us as Jamaicans are ones that are common across the world. We talk about things like depression, anxiety, things like even psychotic conditions like schizophrenia, and then conditions like bipolar disorder. These are some of the most alarming issues anywhere you go in the world. However, we must also appreciate that there are unique aspects of our culture and our social context that makes mental health in Jamaica a really interesting and unique experience. Our history as a country in the Western Hemisphere that has had people of African descent, Indian descent, Chinese descent, and other areas coming together in a melting pot of influences means that our view on mental health and by extension the culture surrounding mental health is a bit different. So one of the things I want us to look at today when we talk about mental health and talking about mental health is the unique nature of mental health in our context as Caribbean people, as Jamaican people. Now, first and foremost, I would like to say that one of the interesting things about growing up in a country like Jamaica, we're not a huge country population-wise. We're not a huge country in terms of square foot miles. But we do have this larger than life national identity. Anywhere in the world you go, people know what the Jamaican identity, or at least aspects of the Jamaican identity, are about. And at this point in time, if anybody is brave enough or interested, I want to ask you guys quickly, before we even start narrowing it down to mental health, what are some of the unique aspects of the Jamaican identity that you can discuss or mention? If you're in Germany, if you're in Philippines, if you're in Australia, what do you think are some of the things that people automatically identify with the Jamaican spirit? What do you guys think? Does anyone have a comment or a point that they'd like to make?
Someone in the chat says, or tone, good vibes.
Right, thank you.
And I'm thinking body language as well.
Okay, all right. I'm liking what I'm hearing so far.
I was also saying we are a bit jovial and cheerful, kind of, we are a laid back kind of, that's the vibe that you get from person. You know more about it, man, or, leave them something there alone. But I also think that in terms of parenting style is one that we're also known for across the world. That relationship. So those are two things that I found very pointed about Jamaica.
One thing I may add to that is maybe our dishes. I think anywhere we go and you taste some food, you can sometimes tell when that was made by a Jamaican hand. So I think that's one of the things that stands out for us.
Someone had mentioned the point of our parenting style. I like all the contributions so far. But we talk about our parenting style. Could someone elaborate on that one further?
Sure.
That's an interesting one.
All right. So we've been on social media recently, well, more often than usual. And sometimes there are little memes or little snippets of how, if you are an American parent or, a different parent from somewhere else in the country, this is how you would react. But then in Jamaica, everybody you see in the chat where they'll give an example and everyone in the chat, yeah, man, that's Jamaica, or that's Caribbean, or that's just how, parents interact with their kids in terms of the disciplinary styles and so forth, or, respect. That kind of parent-child relationship is very well known.
So thanks for mentioning that. So let's highlight some of the things, and I'm really happy you guys jumped in and were so interactive, because I think that there's no better person to talk about our national identity than those of us that live in the nation. So the things that you mentioned to me that I think speak to, at least in part, speak to the Jamaican identity, and that to me also overlap with what makes up some of our mental health picture. Descriptive terms like us being laid back, the kind of picture of us being jovial people, being happy. And then when I hear us talk about our food and our music, what I think about is almost and give me poetic license, guys, it's almost the spiciness of some of our cultural elements. We're believed to be persons who have that extra bit of oomph in the way we carry ourselves at time, in the way that we express ourselves in our music, our dance, certainly our food. And that speaks to creativity, right? So we're creative people. And I think when you look at the combination of those factors, creativity, jovialness, it's kind of laid back nature at times, I think some of that helps to paint the cultural identity that we have, where anywhere in the world you go, people would say, oh yeah, that person seems like a Jamaican. But deep down though, we appreciate that the Jamaican identity is actually a lot more complex than just that alone. Yeah. We're not always laid back. We're not always jovial. And the reason I mention this is because at times in our culture, and this is not unique to our culture, I believe it's present in many cultures, we can sometimes feel as though there's really one authentic Jamaican image, right? And I think part of this contributes to how we view mental health in Jamaica. Generally speaking, in many cases, guys, as you might be aware, if you are to exhibit depressive symptoms, maybe not feeling well, maybe being sad about something for a long period of time, in many areas of Jamaica, what that is met with is a bit of skepticism, this idea that you can just shake it off, you can just move past it. And part of the reason why we think that way is because of that, again, identity we have as people. This idea that we're a strong people, we're a jovial people. There's nothing wrong with that cultural identity. But I want you to see how it shapes our discussions on mental health, or at least how it has shaped our discussions on mental health in the past. Miss Whitley says, Whiteley, sorry, hope I'm pronouncing it appropriately, says our jovial attitude is a way of coping with the mental issues that our society gives us. Being jovial is a coping mechanism. That's an interesting point that she's putting forward. There are other cultures where the national identity might be associated with something of a different character. The Germans are often associated with like this very efficient, calculated character. Persons from the Netherlands also tend to have this very focused and sometimes, for lack of a better way of putting it, even miserable character. A lot of persons from the Netherlands will associate their national identity or character with that. I may not go any further and talk about cultures that I'm not completely aware of. But as we look at how culture and our national identity interacts with our idea of mental health and who we are as people, let me now touch on where I think we are evolving and areas where I see the evolution and why discussions like the one we're having tonight are so important. What I see in a discussion like the one we're having tonight, by discussion I mean before I've started talking, is that people appreciate now that our mental health is something that we have to consciously work on. It is not just we're imbued with this jovialness and happiness and being laid back. But we accept that if we are going to be able to reach our optimal mental health, we need to take conscious steps. And I think that was really well illustrated in the bingo game. So things like making sure that we sleep appropriately, making sure that we find some time to spend with friends and family, but also understanding the importance of self-reflection. And the list goes on, because I thought you guys did a good job of outlining many of the practices that allow for a stable mental health. I believe that as Jamaicans, we're now more aware than ever that our mental health is more than just something that we're imbued with, something that we're born with. To a large degree, our mental health is affected by genetic factors. We do know, for instance, that they say 50% of what determines how happy you are is genetic. Some people are actually more predisposed to be happier than others. And that's an interesting discussion. But there's a whole other 50% that's determined by us as people. So when we, as a group, and this is what we are right here tonight, guys, as a group of Jamaicans come together and have discussions on mental health, and we say, let's talk about mental health. I appreciate that discussions like this are now adding to our evolution on mental health. And now, as Ms. Whiteley adds on, she says, we now know that mental health is not associated with mad people. And I agree. I think that also speaks to the evolution. We appreciate that when we talk about mental health now, it encompasses so much more. And that's why I'm happy we're talking about your national identity. Because mental health includes creativity. Mental health includes how we can work together as a team. When we look at what happens in regards to the abuse that some of our women and children face in the national arena, we have to appreciate that that's a mental health issue as well. So it's an issue of security, yes, but it's also a mental health issue. We know that persons who are exposed to domestic violence as children are several times more likely to become perpetrators of domestic violence. This has been proven all over the world. When a study was done in the 80s looking at the profile of a murderer in Jamaica, what they found was that they were more likely to have certain personality disorders, specifically what we call antisocial personality disorder, if we're going to be very technical. So what I want us to appreciate is that if we want to make Jamaica the Jamaica that we want to, live in, work in, and discussions on mental health and trying to evolve mental health and our discussions on it are essential. Even though we may not necessarily look at it that way, developing a more patient and more gentle way of interacting with each other is another area and another way of improving our mental health. In my capacity as a doctor at the University of the West Indies, I see many patients who come with mental illnesses. And sometimes when a mental illness becomes very severe, then pharmacological intervention in the form of medication is what we will use. And then psychological intervention sometimes is what we'll use, or sometimes we'll use both. But what we have to remember, guys, is that unlike other forms of health, or maybe more so than other forms of health, mental health is hugely affected by our social and cultural practices. So really, guys, when we talk about treating each other better, being more patient with others and ourselves, as you guys rightly said, getting a little bit more sleep. So maybe you're more attentive tomorrow, and maybe a little less cranky. These things not only improve your mental health, but they can actually improve the mental health of our country. Because if we really want to see, and it's a symbiotic relationship, meaning if we as a people continue to take steps to be more socially and culturally aware and adapt, then we can also improve the individual and collective mental health picture of Jamaica. And if we go about trying to improve the individual mental health picture of Jamaica, then we'll improve the society at large. Because as I've said before, guys, when we look at something that we're all familiar with, something that's bothering all of us right now, these issues of abuse against our women and children, we do have to appreciate that there's a mental health aspect to it as well. And I'm not trying to necessarily excuse the perpetrators of these crimes. But in a big way, some of them are actually the victims of mental health issues themselves. For instance, we know if you're chronically stressed, you're more likely to be violent, for instance. That's just a simple example. So that was the approach I wanted to take on our discussion about mental health. When we say let's talk about mental health today. This is, I thought, how I could kind of put a unique spin on the discussion of mental health, because I think you guys have done an excellent job on talking about ways of identifying mental health issues, on steps we can take to improve mental health. So for me, my discussion is kind of putting it into a context and letting us appreciate that our discussions on mental health, just like the ones we're doing tonight, like the ones you guys might do in your smaller groups, like the ones that we do on a national level, are helping us to evolve the mental health of Jamaica. So I'm happy that we have this national identity of being jovial people, laid back, very creative, spicy people, and that's good. But aside from that, let's also appreciate that part of our national identity is that we are people that are suffering collectively. We're suffering from the abuse that we dole out to each other, the violence that we dole out to each other. That too is a part of our mental health picture. When people think of Jamaica, when I went to school, I'm gonna wrap this up in 2 minutes, guys. When I went to school, med school that is, I would meet people from Trinidad and Barbados. They would tell me that their families were afraid to bring them to Jamaica because of this image of being a very violent country. That too is a part of our national identity. Some people regard us as a very boisterous, violent set of people. And if we're going to start tweaking that aspect of our national identity, then we definitely have to have a very concerted effort on how we treat each other and how we try and promote the mental health of our people and of ourselves. That about concludes my discussion on mental health, guys. I see here where Ms. Allen asks, how do I know if I need counseling? I think that's a very good question to ask. There's some telltale signs that we look for. Certainly with the very common mental health issues, like depression, like anxiety. We can talk about feeling sad most of the time, no longer finding enjoyment in things that we once used to enjoy, no longer eating like we used to, no longer sleeping like we used to, and even sometimes having thoughts of harming ourselves. Those are a lot of red flags that suggest that counseling might be necessary. But I would say that another example, which is very practical and relatable to a lot of us, is being aware that you may not be functioning as you normally would. A lot of times when we are starting to slip in school, or we're starting to slip away in terms of our responsibility to our families, or we're not able to really take care of ourselves as we often would, a lot of times that's indicative of a mental health issue. So what we can do at times is try and be a bit introspective. So if we realize, okay, wait, well, and I'm having trouble in school at the moment, or all of a sudden I am not able, I feel like I don't have as much energy, I'm not able to enjoy things I used to enjoy. Take a minute to self-reflect and ask why. Sometimes it may not necessarily be a mental health issue specifically. So for instance, your energy levels can be linked to your diet. But at times it can speak to maybe a deeper underlying mental health issue. So the two things I'd suggest in terms of helping you be able to know when you need counseling are speak to yourself. By that I don't mean literally, by the way. What I mean is being introspective and taking the time to just reflect and say, hey, why am I sleeping less? Why am I sleeping more? Have I changed my diet recently? Is it because all of a sudden I feel more stressed? Is it because I no longer get to see my father as often as I used to? But also, besides speaking to yourself, and again, going back to the topic of let's talk mental health, talking to others sometimes allows us to reveal things. I would tell you in my personal experience, I'm surprised the amount of times when I will be going through something. But when I talk and tell someone about it, that's when I realize, wait, I really was feeling this way all along and I wasn't even completely aware. So in terms of when you're going to need to know if you need counseling, I would say having those discussions with yourself and having those discussions with others, when you start picking up changes or things you're not happy with, asking yourself why, or maybe expressing it to others can help reveal if counseling is necessary or not. And remembering that counseling doesn't mean that we don't only go to counselors when we have a mental illness. We can go to counselors when we just have a mental health issue. It's maybe not a full-blown illness. You may not be fully depressed, but you may have some issues or concerns. At that time, counseling could also be appropriate. And definitely, guys, remember that if you have been the victim of a traumatic experience, let's say someone close to you has died, or you have been the victim of some kind of physical or even sexual abuse, lots of times counseling is very much indicated in a situation like that. And a lot of times people don't necessarily seek it. So the last thing I'll mention is, yes, if you're the victim of some kind of emotionally traumatic experience, it may be time that you see the counselor. And if it happened last year or the year before, and you find that it's still affecting you, you're having flashbacks, then going to the counselor might be the most appropriate thing. Ms. Allen asks, what are some behavioral patterns that signify cry for help? Okay, so you guys are asking some very good questions. Some of these questions require extended answers, but I will do my best to try and answer them succinctly. Cry for help is usually is oftentimes, I should say, not explicit. So the person won't say, hey, John, I need help. Sometimes they may do actions in the hope subconsciously that a hand will be extended to them. Unfortunately, many times these kind of actions can be self-destructive. As we know, sometimes persons may even harm themselves. We can talk about self-cutting, for instance, or what we call in our setting. I know Melissa would be very familiar with this term because, of course, she's a healthcare professional herself. In our setting, what we call parasuicide. This is when someone does something that appears to be a suicide attempt, but they didn't really want to hurt themselves. So it's kind of like you do a slight overdose on a medication that probably won't kill you, but at the same time, it is an overdose, so it raises an alarm. So sometimes things like self-destructive behavior that comes out in that way can be a cry for help. Because when someone engages in a self-destructive behavior, it's a way of saying, well, there's something wrong with me. Can you assist me? Sometimes people don't feel they can say it. And again, sometimes a lot of this can be done subconsciously. So those are some examples of behavioral patterns that signify cry for help. But there are others. I do feel like our discussion, I mean, not necessarily be that, that might be a little bit on the scope of our discussion to go into everything. So Whitley asks, how do I know if I'm depressed? So some of the things that we look out for, there are a whole set of symptoms that we really look out for. You feel sad most of the time and most days. Have you lost enjoyment for things that you used to really enjoy doing, or you're no longer interested in doing things that you used to like? You have issues with sleeping, and believe it or not, it can be both oversleeping and undersleeping, sleeping too little, sleeping too much. Do you have problems eating? Again, it can be eating too little or eating too much. You have problems with concentration, significant issues with concentration. You have these negative thoughts in your mind, feelings as though you're worthless, you're hopeless. You feel extremely guilty, you start blaming yourself for everything. We know sometimes persons who are the victim of abuse start blaming themselves. They say, it's my fault I was abused. Of course, if you start thinking that you may want to hurt yourself, that would be another sign of depression. And then again, as I would have mentioned, Ms. Whitley, if you realize that you're no longer as functional at work, at school, or in your regular day-to-day, then that could be a sign that you're depressed. So a combination of looking out for these signs, and then again, as Shamar says, self-reflecting, and maybe talking to others close to us, can then allow us to appreciate if we're depressed or not. Could you prescribe a tactful way to tell a friend that he or she needs counseling, considering that they are in denial of such? You know, the beautiful thing about mental health issues is that they really are universal. We all go through them. Even if your life is seemingly perfect now, and I would love, if anybody here is experiencing the perfect life right now, please raise your hand and tell us all about it, because you are definitely a unique person. Most people don't necessarily have the perfect life. But even if you're going through the perfect life right now with zero issues, no problems at all, it wasn't always that way. It may have not been that way last year, may not have been that way last month. When you realize that someone is going through a significant mental health issue and may need counseling, one of the ways you can go about communicating this to them, bringing it forward to them, as you say, in a tactful way, making them appreciate that, hey, guess what? I have gone through this issue. Now, it's even better if you yourself may have done some counseling before. But if not, what you can say is, boy, you know, maybe I would have been able to handle things even better if I'd gone to counseling. Also appreciate making it clear to them that them having these mental health issues that you see is not a sign of necessarily a sign of weakness or that there's something wrong with them, but that these mental health issues or mental health issues at large are just a normal part of being human, a human being. And by sometimes when we share our own mental health issues, whether it be past, present, it makes it more relatable and, as we say, more tactful, to then recommend that somebody else may want to do it. Mr. Allen asked, should I be ashamed if I have to seek counseling? Absolutely not. What I would say is, do you feel ashamed when you seek the general medical doctor for anything? We all need help in various ways. We can't do it all. When I have an issue with my car, I go to the mechanic. I've tried to put some repairs on my car before myself. I learned the hard way that it's probably best to go to the mechanic man. So when you go to seek counseling, it's the same way as if you're going to seek a mechanic, a dentist, individuals that are better at helping you. We're all going to need help at some point. So certainly one shouldn't feel ashamed. And as a matter of fact, I would argue that there's a certain pride you can get, just like it shows that you're a responsible and conscientious person for going to the mechanic and making sure that your car is working properly so that you drive safe and you're reassuring the safety of people on the road because your car won't break down. Or you go to the doctor just to make sure that you're okay and your health is fine so that you can be functional and you can be there to support your family and friends the best you can. It's the same thing with counseling. The idea, anytime anyone goes to a counselor, is to get better. And by getting better, you're being responsible and you're being conscientious, because a better you is better able to help other people. So in a way, counseling is even something you can wear with a badge of pride, because it shows that you have the self-awareness to appreciate that there is an issue, but guess what? There's also a solution. Many times in life, we have to look beyond ourselves for the solution. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, to be seeking help for that solution. Shauna asks, are drug or therapy better for mental health issues and condition? That's a great question. And to be honest with you, it varies. It depends on what kind of mental health issue or illness we're dealing with. Some require medication. Some can really only be treated effectively with medication in the early parts. Some can be handled with psychology, mainly. Let's look at something like anorexia or bulimia. And we don't even really talk about these things that often in our context, but I'll bring them up. Anorexia is the idea that you're fat even when you're not. To simplify it, we know that anorexia is a condition that medication isn't that effective for. And so for that, a condition like that, certainly therapy would be probably the better approach. So there is a role for medication, but that condition, definitely. Let's look at something like, we can even take it and to bring it to another interesting point. We can even look at something like erectile dysfunction, because yes, sexual dysfunction is also regarded as a mental health issue. There's a whole section of the DSM-5, which is basically the diagnostic manual for mental health conditions dedicated to sexual dysfunction. Lots of times when people have erectile dysfunction or sexual dysfunction, it's due to psychological issues. And generally speaking, the way we treat that is with therapy. We do know of medication, and it's popular medication like Viagra, for instance, that can help some persons with erectile dysfunction. But at the same time, we know a lot of the reason why people have issues with erectile dysfunction or sexual dysfunction is due to issues of anxiety and depression, for instance. And in those cases, psychological intervention or therapy would be the best approach to take. Now, for a condition like bipolar disorder, for instance, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but it is a very severe condition. And as of right now, in most scenarios, medication is definitely going to need to be on board for some period of time. So when we ask drug therapy or is drug or is it therapy better, I wouldn't say either is better. We use them depending on the situation. And then we look at one of the most common mental health issues, depression. We know that in persons that have very mild depression, psychological intervention can be enough. Once you start getting moderate depression, then at that point, you kind of have to start balancing the need for medication and therapy. But once you start going into severe depression, and that's when medication is needed. And most studies show, by the way, that a combination of medication and therapy is actually more effective in treating moderate to severe depression. So I wouldn't say either is better or worse. It's just we have to fit it for each issue. I see some people, very interested in the example that I used when I talked about sexual dysfunction as a mental health issue. But yes, guys, that shows you, as I said, mental health issues are so broad. So it does cover things like sexual dysfunction, covers eating disorders, our body image, things like that, daily things that we have to deal with sometimes, mental health issues as well. So again, this is just a part of the discussion on mental health issues now. We're expanding our discussion, we're evolving our discussion. As my friend said, we don't just associate it with being mad anymore. No, it's a lot more than that. Sleeping conditions are another form of mental health issue. But anyway, let me not digress. How do we know that our counselor is best for us based on our situation or condition? Great question. You guys are asking some really excellent questions, man. The reality is that you can never really know if the counselor is ideal for you until you try it. And the truth is, when it comes to counseling, it will vary from person to person. So, Patricia might be a great counselor for me, but she might be a terrible counselor for Janika. So, unfortunately, there's no proven way to know if this specific counselor is the ideal one. But what you can do is sometimes, these very kind of broad demographic categories can help a little bit. For some people, it's like, okay, they do better with someone of the opposite gender. So maybe you're a guy, you do better with women, you open up more with women. Women may open up more with guys for whatever reason. So that you can use that to kind of help. But truthfully, you can never really know. You kind of just have to go in, hope for the best. And it's not a problem if you just have to see another counselor eventually. Can someone recover from mental health condition without medication? Short answer to that, Sean, is yes. You can recover from some mental health issues without medication, but there's some that you won't be able to. So it varies. It varies. So there's no straight answer for that. So the answer to that is yes, definitely you can. There are some mental health conditions that you can recover without medication. That's true, but not everyone. How can I help someone who tell me that he or she has suicidal thoughts? So the first thing you can do is be there for them, hear them out, understand why they're in this way. You can re-emphasize that this person is important, that they're here for. I'm not even going to say here for a reason, even though I won't necessarily disagree with that statement. I'll say that them being here affects someone, family members, friends. So they have an importance that is there. If you continue to talk to them and you realize that, these suicidal thoughts are due to some issues that are very complex, difficult to deal with, and hard to handle, then at that point in time, you can encourage them to try and seek out professional help if needed. What I would say is the first thing you can do to help someone with suicidal thoughts is to be there and to listen to them and to appreciate why they're having these thoughts. Sometimes just having someone out there listening to them can be enough and can help them get over it, and they don't have to necessarily see a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist, or etc. Yes, once you realize that it's been going on for very long and it's complex, things aren't getting better, maybe things are getting worse, and they even start contemplating really going forward with that suicidal idea, then at that point in time, professional intervention might be necessary. All right, guys, I think that I've answered most of the questions put forward to me. They really were some pretty interesting questions. I've really enjoyed being a part of this discussion and being able to answer your questions. So I'm about to sign out. As I said, unfortunately, I'm actually on the road right now. But I will pay attention to one more comment from Ms. Whitley. I think she says, since everything or most things are virtual now, what if an individual wants therapy but does not appreciate the virtual aspect and would want in-house sessions? What would you recommend? Well, the reality is that in-house sessions are still available by some counselors. Some psychologists offer it. You kind of would have to shop around and speak to different counselors, different psychologists, different therapists, different groups, and find out what offerings they have. But the good news, Ms. Whitley, is that as it stands now, those kind of in-house sessions, those kind of in-person sessions are still being offered as needed, and of course, following the appropriate protocols. All right, guys. So as I said, it's been a pleasure. I think at this point, I'm going to sign out. But I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Discussions like this are so important as we advance our understanding, our collective appreciation of mental health issues, as we build and try to improve our national identity, as we try and become more patient, gentle, and empathetic Jamaica. We can appreciate that all of that is going to be made a lot easier if we can also improve our mental health picture, because the two go hand in hand. Okay. And at the same time, let's appreciate our current, some of our current national identity as well, because all doom gloom aside, and I'm not disregarding that we do have some issues that we need to work on. We still are people that can be proud of our creativity, our resilience, and our ability to have fun sometimes. So all the best, guys. Have a good night.
Dr. Gazara?
Yes.
Before you go, I just want to take a moment just to say thank you very, very much. As you can see in the chat, we were very, very much informed by your presentation. And I'm sure we're more knowledgeable now in terms of mental health and, appreciating the fact that it is not just, as we would put it in Jamaican vernacular, mad people who have mental health or mental illness, but it is way beyond that span. And so we appreciate your taking your time out of your busy schedule just to come and to share in this experience with us. And we hope that we can have you on board some other time to continue on this note. We were very blessed, we were very informed. So on behalf of the O.W.L.S ministry, our friends and visitors, we just want to say thank you very, 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 very much for your time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, guys.
Point that you pointed out, and especially in answering our questions on point, you were very prompt, and we really learned a lot. And there were a lot of questions and on the point, on the ball kind of questions, and you did a great job, and we are very appreciative of that. And I learned a lot personally, and as you can see in the chat, we all learned from your presentation. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. All the best, guys. Stay safe.
Awesome. Today was definitely a blessing, but let us pray to close. Please assume an attitude of reverence. Let us pray. Dear mighty and matchless Father, Lord, we thank you for the presenter today. We thank you for the message that you had for us about mental health. Lord, there are many times when we focus on other things, Lord, and forget how important our minds are. So thank you so much for that reminder. Lord, I hope that everybody here did get a message today, did get a word from you, Lord, and help us to apply everything that we, were taught today so we can take it into our lives and to help somebody else. Lord, I just ask you to just bless each and every person in the hearing of my voice. Lord, I ask you to just bless them mightily, Lord, and I guess give us journeying mercies to our rooms, our individual places of abode. I just ask you to just bless and guide us once more in Jesus' precious name. Amen.